from Lagos, Nigeria. My name is Omolola Ezefoma, and you're welcome to Demystifying Data with Omolola. Where the focus today is the data flow in your organization. Our focus today is the data flow in your organization, and we'll be running Meet Me. My name is Omolola Ezefoma. I'm a mom of 2 teen boys, and I started my IT training as a teenager. I currently have 27 years experience as a student and a professional. I spent the past 16 years as a data professional in the telecommunications sector. And right now I'm focusing more on the food sector as data professional. I'm a certified Google Women Tech Mentor, and I have run a confectionery business for the past 13 years. I love to teach anything I know, so I'm here to demystify data for you. And so you're welcome to class today, and I'm sure that you're going to leave here more informed and do business or do whatever you do better with the knowledge that you're going to get from this training today. So welcome to Demystifying Data, and welcome to Demystifying Data with Omolola. So what's our objective today? Our objective today is to show you how data flows in an organization, particularly maybe your organization. And I want you to know that data flow is just talking about money flow. Actually, the value of data is actually monetary. And so you could look at it as data flow in your organization, and you can look at it as how money flows in your organization. And we also want to help you to identify where you are in your organization. Going through the slides, you will see different angles of data flow, and I'm sure you'll be able to pick where you are in your organization. And we'll also be sharing with you our offer for you. So I want you to remember that data is truth. Like I always say, data is truth. Yeah, somebody would say, oh, but what about if the information captured was wrong? For whatever reason, it still represents what was captured. It represents what was reported. So data is truth. It gives the real situation of things, right? And it's also a vehicle. It can take you from where you are today to where you really want to be. Data is a vehicle. It can take you from where you are today to where you really want to be. Because in the data you collect from your business, you can see what has happened in your business, and you can see what you want to happen in your business. You can make some extrapolations with your data to travel to wherever you want to go and as far as you want to go. Now, data is business. Everything that happens in your business generates data. And that is the truth about your business, and that is your business. And so if they say, oh, we have too much orders, we don't have time to collect data, that means we're saying we don't have time to improve on our business. We don't have time to track our business. We don't have time for auditing our business. We don't have time to get information for regulatory for our business. And you know that whenever there is trouble, that becomes a big problem. So data is business, and it is part of what you do that you call business today. All right. And data is everyone's business. Everybody in an organization is a part of the data flow in that organization. Everybody plays one part or the other, and you will see that very soon as we go through the slides. So let me talk about business processes, because we want to talk about data flow, and it's important that we understand also that data doesn't just flow on its own. It flows along with processes in any organization. So every business runs on processes. Every business has its processes. The things you do every day in your business represents one process or the other, right? Example, you want to produce a particular product. In the chain of getting the product created in your organization or produced in your organization are processes, and every business runs on processes. Whether you provide goods or you provide services, every business runs on processes. And the flow of processes determines the outcome of the business in terms of service and data visibility. What do I mean by that? The way your processes flow in your organization will determine how successful you will be in the quality of service that you provide. Say, for example, collecting orders from customers, to communicating it to where it will be executed, right? There has to be very clear processes that ensures that the information from the customer is accurate and the information to the executor of the requirements is accurate. Now, that depends on very good processes for us to have consistent results. So again, the flow of processes determine the outcome of your business in terms of services, can I say quality of service, and data visibility. If the flow of your business processes do not allow for data collection, data visibility may never happen. Now, business processes need to be intentionally documented and communicated to members of your team in the organization or unit within the organization. Now, when we look at an organization, you might want to look at an organization as the whole company. You might want to look at the organization as a unit within the organization. I, for example, for a long time worked in the MIS unit, that's Management Information Systems unit of a telco company. Now, that's MIS could be seen as an organization within the organization because it has its own input, process, and output, which contributes to the larger organization. So as a staff in an MIS unit, for example, I may be looking at information, looking at my unit as an organization. So I want you to have that behind your mind as you follow me this evening, my time, as you follow me today. I want you to have it in your mind that we're not talking about just your boss if you're just a part of an organization. We're talking about you also and what you contribute within your organization. And if you own a business, or if you own a business or you run a business for somebody, this is very important. Your business processes need to be intentionally documented. You need to sit down after this webinar and say, what exactly do we do in this unit? What exactly do we do in this organization? And what exactly are the steps, are the processes that have to be executed in order for us to deliver the service that we deliver? Now, this is what I mean by intentional documentation and communication. And then you ask yourself, does everybody in the team understand this process? Does everybody in the team understand how they contribute to this process? I can tell you many stories about this point, right? My own experience, where you tell somebody, you expect that people know what they are doing. Then after an error, you find out that, oh, this person did not get the communication properly. And so it's important that we ensure that our processes are documented and communicated, and not just documented, also reviewed, because when you change things in your processes, you need to review your processes and make sure that you are recommunicating them. So your business process is very important. Please, if you have feedback, you can put it in the chat, and we have an attendance form in the chat. Please fill the attendance form. Now, business processes should flow into each other to have great synergy that produces great results. Business processes should flow into each other to have great synergy and that produces great results. So if you have processes, how well do they flow to give you the results that your business is about? Now, does your business have clear-cut processes that are repeatable with consistent results? Like, you can have processes, but how much of your processes require human reasoning, right? If you have a process that leaves a lot to the reasoning of the executor of that process, then it's not repeatable. It's not easily repeatable. It means you will always depend on the humans to repeat that process. And when you have processes like that, automation becomes almost impossible. It becomes almost impossible. In fact, what it would take to automate such processes will be artificial intelligence, and that's very expensive. And we are still not in the, this is the stage where it is still a very expensive solution to get. And so it's important that we clear up our processes, we review our processes, we ensure that they are clear-cut, there's not too much of human intervention required, we minimize human intervention in the thought process, for those processes, and they are repeatable, and you can have consistent results. So business data and business process. So every process generates data, and every process requires some form of input. Every process you have in your organization will require some form of input, and they will all generate some form of data. And so, are you collecting the data? Do you know where the data of your processes are? I want you to start thinking right now. Are you collecting data within your business? And can you tell where the data is? And what's the quality of inputs that your processes have been getting before now? What's the quality of your outcomes before now, right? And every process needs to be fed with accurate data. Yeah, that's why I said, what is the quality of your processes before now? Do you have a lot of issues within your processes? Do you find yourself arguing with your team members a lot and saying, oh, but you did not say this, but you left this house, and things like that? All that are indicators to tell you that there's a gap in your processes. There's a gap in your communication. There's a gap in the definitions that you currently have. So I want to make a typical cake business flow. A typical cake business flow. It gets more complicated than this, but this is the simplest form that you could have it, right? You have your customer order, and you take that as an input. You have your customer order. I'm using the cake business as a sample or a use case, for example, in understanding this. And I believe that most of us would have ordered a cake at one time or the other. So this is quite relatable, right? Customer orders, and that is an input. You take your customer order as an input. Every process flow would have input, process, and the results, the outputs, right? So when a customer makes a consultation, when you have consultation with your customer, you get your customer's requirement, whether you are providing goods or services, whatever the kind of business you have, food, tailoring, banking, whatever the kind of business you have. In fact, let me make an example of a banking environment. Your banking environment, a customer comes in and says, I want to transfer money from this account to another account that is abroad. That's a consultation. That's your input from your customer, and you're collecting requirements. Oh, what's your account number? What is the account number you want to transfer to? How much do you want to transfer to that account? These are inputs into the process, right? Is the account funded? You check that in your process. So what happens there is that you get your inputs from your customer, then you go to the process. At the process, you begin to ask questions. Just like in your cake business, you go to your process and you begin to ask questions and say, oh, cake design. So for example, you say in the process, cake design, what's the design of the cake? You've gotten the input from the customer, then you go to the processing. What's the design of the cake? What are we baking? What are we decorating? And packaging. Oh, it's baked, it's decorated now. Packaging. It's the result, what you deliver to the customer and the customer's feedback. Those form your output. And this is like a typical case of a business flow in a cake environment. But this is just to show you at a simple form, and we're going further to go into more details. So, like I said, data is everyone's business. Today, I'm just looking at it from another perspective and rearranging. If you had our last webinar, you probably saw something more different. I mean, something different from this. But this is another perspective that I'm rearranging things today. You have suppliers. In any business, you have things that you must first acquire in order to create your produce, right? And so you've gotten supplies, you've bought things, services from your vendors and partners. You are tracking all this information. You're tracking who you're buying what from, what service they are providing you, who are your collaborators, and all of that. You have the list of this. This produces very relevant information that your staff use in achieving things. So your staff wants to do a procurement. It knows the information about your vendor. It talks to your vendor. It gets the service from the vendor and the administrative things that need to be done. All of these are generating data footprints everywhere. And Then you have your customers that are making inquiries, purchases, giving feedback. All of these boxes that you have here on the vendor, staff, customer area, there are different data points, data items that are generated while these processes are happening. When a customer is making a purchase, you are tracking what exactly is this customer buying, and you're documenting that. When you talk to the customer and customer gives feedback, you have data from the customer telling you which of your product is fantastic, what is not good about your product. These are all data prints that your business is creating, that you have to look at your processes. You have processes within all of these things: processes for supplies, processes for services, processes for collaboration, process for procurement, for produce, for administration, for making inquiries. How does your customer make inquiries? Through WhatsApp, through emails? How many points can a customer contact you from? All of these things, very important, leaving you data prints. And then you have your reporting and dashboards. You need reports to know what you're doing. For example, in a cake shop on a Monday, you want to know everything that needs to go out for that week. You need reports for such operations. Ops is operations here. You need dashboards to manage the business, like dashboards that shows your reorder level, that shows how your sales are going, so that you can know when you need to put an intervention or something needs to be done to ensure that you meet your goals for the month. Then you have regulatory. Regulatory asks for, usually in any business area, you have regulatory that's asking different information: financial information, your production information, your service information. Regulatory always looking into your business to see whether you are doing things the way it should be done. And all of these things are powered by different processes. And so on a high level, I want to do an overview of a standard business process. On a high level, an overview of a standard business process and what it looks like. You receive orders. When you receive orders, you get details. When you receive orders, you have details about your order. The process of receiving orders will generate data about the order, about the customer, and things that are going on within your ordering process. Depending on how you design your process, you may be able to tell how long it took to get the order from the customer, how long it took to close the order, rather. You're able to tell exactly what the customer wants. You're able to tell how the customer wants it, when the customer wants it. All of this will be data that is fed into the order processing. When in the order processing, we're talking about details of actions to fulfill the order. What are the details of actions to fulfill the order? Who needs to do what? Because what the order is now broken down into steps that will deliver whatever the order that you have received is. Talking about the process within an organization, your organization. What's your own order process today? How do you process orders that you have received? How do you receive orders? How do you process orders that you have received? Where are they documented? Do you have them documented anywhere today? Do you write it on paper? You could have it digitally, you could have it on paper, but are you tracking the details of actions required to fulfill? How do you communicate actions to your team members? How do you communicate things to be done within your team? Then the details of production, because when you have your orders processed, information about delivery of the service or production of the product or service now is the next step. What are the details of production? What was done based on the processed order to deliver the service? Details of activities. So, for example, in a cake shop, like I mentioned earlier, you will be looking at what was baked, what was produced for decoration, who did what, when did they do it? All those details, very important, very significant when you want to evaluate how your business is going as a whole. Then you have your finished product or service delivery. What is your delivery mechanisms? Different organizations have different delivery mechanisms. What's your delivery mechanism? What is going to be delivered to who, by who, how, all the details of that captured by the process for your delivery. Then once your delivery is done, there's also a process for feedback. Feedback is life for any business. Every business needs to have a feedback system. Some years ago, we had a feedback system where you had to talk to the customer after the delivery of the product and get a screenshot to show that the customer was really happy or unhappy or whatever the feedback was for processing. What's your process for getting customer feedback? Do you have a form that is designed to send to your customers? Do you have applications that you're using in your organization? There are different organizations, different applications for getting things done. In some organizations, you have big applications for your order collection, for processing of things within the organization. You take a banking solution, for example, there are entry points for where you would enter your requirements. And within the bank, there are other big applications that are used for processing the things that need to happen in the organization. These are what I mean by the processes that get you to deliver the goods to your customers. Now, the question is, where you are today, how does this work for you in your organization today? How does this flow in your organization today? How does this flow in your organization today? Are you able to capture all your orders? Are you able to tell where you are with your orders? Are you able to track what has been done for your customers? Are you able to communicate? It's very important that you are able to track all of these things. Very, very important that you're able to track all of these things and communicate adequately, your services. So are you able to do that today? I want us to do some thinking about this. Are you able to do this within your organization today? Are you able to do this within your organization today? Very important that you are able to do this, think about what you do in your organization today and really, really say, where are we? What are we doing today? Do we have processes? Do we have processes? Are we getting it right in our activities today? This is the essence of looking at this thing together and seeing, what am I doing today? Where am I missing it? What can I do better within our processes? I'm going to have questions and answers, so we'd like to hear your feedback. So exactly what I've been saying. Where are you? Do you have business processes documented? Are you able to identify the different processes in your organization? Is there data flow happening in your organization? I know that I have some of the comments in the chat, so I'll quickly look at that then so that we can begin to think about how to begin to wrap. Oh, okay. So we would like to get your feedback from the conversation. I have a question here that says, how do data analysts identify the core business processes in their organization? Fantastic question. Now, this is a data analyst perspective of this. Anybody with a business perspective, I'll definitely answer that question. Thank you for that awesome question. Hello. Do you have any other question? All right. So I'll go back. How does a data analyst identify what the core processes is in any organization? So I imagine that somebody is a data analyst and has just gotten a job today and finds herself in any business, and you want to know, where exactly is my responsibility within this organization? How do I identify what the core business processes are, and how do I apply myself to the things that go on in the organization? So first things first, I would say is get into understanding how the business works. Get into understanding how the business works. I have this write-up I do on LinkedIn where I talk about rising data stars. And one of the things I say is, if you get a job, day one at the job is a learning process. You're not doing anything day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7. You're learning what the business is about. So the first thing is to understand how the business flows and ask very relevant questions, like what is critical in this organization? Where are the key points where data drops within this organization? That needs to be evaluated. Where can I get the accurate information of what happened, the accurate information about what has happened within the organization? In my earlier life, I don't want to talk about too much technical things. I promise that I would not talk too much technical stuff. But you know, in my former life, whenever we need to report anything, I interview everybody within the process that needs to be reported. So let's say, for example, the question is, we want to know what services a customer has. We want to know what service a customer has on services the customer would have on their line in a telecom environment. That's where I spent 16 years of my life. So what do? The question goes to the people in charge of provisioning to say, when a person has this service, where is it recorded? Now, where that is recorded is your point of reporting. And this is how you collect the information. In most organizations, you're supposed to have a data dictionary, you're supposed to have metadata, a business glossary. But the truth is that this is often not the case in many organizations. So when that is not the case, you need to do a lot of fact findings, documentation, testing of whatever information you receive. So when they are told that this application generates this, and your data warehouses the information from this application in this table, you need to go to that table and and run those inquiries and test that indeed that information is there. And that way you start building block by block to be able to get how to function as a data analyst in the environment. But today I want to focus more on the business people. So if you have any question, we can unmute and ask your question. I think I need to allow participants to unmute at this point. All right, so do we have any question about what we've gone through so far? I'll quickly do a run back into what we've been talking about so far. So I said, remember that data is truth, data is a vehicle, data is business and everyone's business. What does that mean? That the truth about what happens in your organization is the data that you have collected in your organization. And the vehicle is a vehicle because it helps you get to where you're going from where you are. And it is business because it is a representation of what happens in your organization. It's a representation of the data of your organization, and it is everyone's business. And data is not digital. It's not, yes, we've used technology to make data digital, but in some organizations, what you have is still what you write on paper, and that still is data. It does not stop being data because it's not digital. So when we think about data, we should not limit our minds to, oh, all those things they have on the computer. That's not what your data is. Your data is that thing that they fill in the form. When you go to an office and you sign a form that says you entered there at X time, that is data about the entry and exit of people in that organization. And we said business processes, every business runs on processes, and the flow of processes determines the outcome of the business. And so when you see in your business, when you think back in your business and see, oh, there's always mix up here, there's always mix up there, that is telling you that there's something to look at in the processes in your organization. And business processes need to be intentionally documented and communicated to all members in the organization. And whenever there are changes in your organization, you need to review your business process and communicate again and ensure that it is still aligning with the goals of your business. All right. And business processes should flow into each other to have great synergy that produces results. And the question is, does your business have clear-cut processes that are repeatable with consistent results? Does your business have clear-cut processes that are repeatable with consistent results? If you are producing things, do you have recipes? Do you have standard operating systems? Do you have steps clearly communicated to your staff on what exactly to do? Do you have it communicated that they should also be documented, right? For example, I was trying to deal with a business question this week in the company where I lead right now. And the question was, how did we exhaust materials? Now, the next question, the administrators, the answer rather from the administrator was, check the data. The data has been captured. I said, good. I like that you're referring me to the data. Now, checking the data, we found out that the data was not properly captured. There were things to correct. And so the question is, did we communicate properly to that person responsible for the process? Is there something we can do better? All right. Is there something we can do better? So please, if you have questions, we're open to taking questions now. I'm just running through the things that we've done before now, right? And we said business data and business processes. Every process generates data, and every process needs to be fed with accurate data. You need to communicate the right order to get the right produce and get the right feedback from the customers. And then we talked about dashboards, reports, and regulatory being very important reasons why you should collect data in your entire process flow. Imagine that you had a set of production, let's say in the food industry, because I'm leaning in the food industry somehow today. Let's say you produce something and the taste didn't go well and it caused health hazards. Now, if regulatory gets to know about that, they will come back to ask you, how did you produce that? What materials did you use? And then you have to go back and check who supplied us the material, who produced the product, who delivered the products. You begin to see that if you don't keep track of those processes, you don't have any documentation, you will not be able to tell what went wrong, and you may get into trouble with regulatory. So it's very important that we're able to get these things. And so we talked about the standard business flow and how things flow. You receive orders, and when you receive orders, that process of receiving orders will generate some data about orders. And the process of processing the order also creates some details about actions required. And those details represent your data, your business data about the process that needs to be communicated. And the production team also will generate details about the production of the service or product that you will deliver, which the delivery system will also create details about the products and delivery mechanism. And you have also on the client details, also the feedback. You get the details of the feedback. You're able to tell which customer is happy and which customer is unhappy with your product. And the question is, where are you today? So I see some questions. I see some questions here. A question says, how do you become a data analyst, the pathway? Can anyone in another industry be a data analyst? So this is a fantastic question. Thank you for asking. Let me see who asked this question. Thank you for asking, Odwayo. Now, a data analyst is not industry specific. And like in our previous webinar, we talked about how data is something that is subject oriented. What does that mean? That when you talk about data, it is specialized. So data in the food industry is different from data in the banking industry, is different from data in the education industry, whatever industry you may be looking at. So, and every industry needs a data analyst. So, Odwayo, we want to share what industry you are right now, because you can actually be a data analyst within your industry. And if you want to change industry, why not? You can also be in another industry. It just means you need to learn how that industry works and how data flows within that industry. So Odwayo, does this answer your question? If it doesn't, please, you can ask more questions and we will answer. Okay, Onyeka, I can see your hands raised. You can ask your question. Hello.
Thank you. Thank you
All right.
for calling me. I was struggling to unmute. Okay, so I want to take you back to your former life, as you call it. Now, let's say, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, let's say you have a postpaid customer and you want to know the services that customer has on the line. Which data source would be more accurate? Would it be the CBS or would it be civil?
Okay. Thank you. So the question is what manages services? That's the question. We say, okay, we have a CBS system and we have a civil system. Between you and I, we know what both systems mean, right? So there are different systems that do different things in the life of a customer. Now, the civil system is supposed to be that system that accounts for the services within an organization. So because that is the way the organization sees it, the civil system should be accounting for the services a customer has. And that's why I talked earlier about having the same set of similar information in two different systems. Now, depending on how operations go within the organization, like I said earlier, the provisioning team, the person, that is the team that is responsible for that service, making sure that customers have service is the person who should tell you where to go eventually, because they know some of the things that happen that may not obey the rules of how things should happen in the organization. And so because of that, they may will tell you that, oh, this thing is supposed to be in this system, but the way the system is now, because of some back-end processes that we do, you might have to take the information from another system. So the answer sometimes to where to pick what information resides with the stewards. So the analyst is not the data stewards. In the last webinar, we talked about all of those kind of things, disciplines, right? So as the analyst, your questions should go to your stewards to get what exactly is happening within the processes so that you can know the best fit. In fact, it depends on what you want to do. Sometimes it may be that the proper system that has the last point of record may not be where to go to, because it depends on the question that business is asking at that time and where is the most appropriate place to go to answer that question. So I hope that answers the question for you. Or have I succeeded in confusing you? All right, thank you. So okay, thank you. One, I want to answer a question, then I'm going to go back to answer the other question that I have. So yes, okay. Thank you, Odon. I see your feedback, and I want to explain something for that about the processes that I've explained and what I mean by the data flow. So I don't know how to pronounce your name very well, my friend Yonke, but I hope I got it right, Yonke. All right. So when I say data flow, here I am pointing to when I was talking about the standard business processes within an organization, I explained how the orders are received, information goes from the orders received to the process, to the team that will be responsible for processing the orders, and this will now generate some order information. Now I'm explaining this from a high level that speaks to it at a business level, not the technical level. Now, I was explaining earlier that all of these circles that we have here could be pointed to different IT systems in an organization that has IT properly set up, right? In an organization that has its IT properly set up, you have all of these things sitting in different systems. But in a system, in a small business or a business that is still trying to get properly automated, this may be sitting in different files and different things within the organization. And the idea behind this webinar is to give us that view, to see that within the processes I have in my organization, data is flowing from one end to the other in order for me to be able to deliver my service. And that is the direction from which this conversation is going on today. That once you receive an order, you get all the details. The data you get from receiving the order flows to the team that is responsible for processing the order. And that also generates some data, and that data, which is the details of actions required to fulfill. The details of actions required to fill is the data that needs to go to the production team. And when it gets to the production team also identifies what needs to be done. And all of these are representing different systems within different organizations. I mean, different systems within different organizations, depending on the size of the organization. For some organization, it's just one big software. In some organizations, they are talking about 5, 10 different solutions within the organization in order to achieve the same process. So whether we're talking about a large enterprise or a small enterprise, we're breaking it down to the basic steps that goes around to achieve this. And I hope that answers your question, Yonke. So do we have any other question? So I saw a question here. Are there best practices in documenting data flow? Angela, please, I acknowledge your hand raised, and in a few minutes, I'm going to get back to that. So are there best practices to documenting data flow? I haven't worked with any particular best practices. Most of the things that I've done have been customized, but I could check that out and get back to you about it. But for most of the processes I follow basic IT processes, the data, flow designs. Thank you. Angela, please, you can ask your questions now.
Sorry, good evening, everyone. Thank you for this seminar. It's not really a question, it's just to reemphasize what you said regarding the question someone asked about being a data analyst. And just to cite an example for me. So I remember working in HR. I was working in HR, mainstream HR, and I felt that I wanted to do data analysis. Of course, I learned how to do data analysis, and it was quite easy to go into data analysis in HR. It made a lot more sense. It made it easier. You can relate with what the data is saying. You can ask more questions. So it's just also to buttress your point that there's data analysis across every spectrum, every department, every area, and everything. And just to talk a bit about the question on how to document, something just came to my mind. I remember working in an organization whereby there were no documented process in HR. And one of the things the head of HR did was to develop forms. Of course, like you said, it's not until the data is digitized before it's data. And it made sense. It's now making sense and more real to me that the fact that you're able to fill forms. First of all, let's even start with forms. Fill the forms. Oh, the staff wants to go on leave. Fill the form. Let us see the person going on leave. Later on, we can collect the form and begin to develop blueprints on what's happening. We can begin to say, oh, at this point, this is our, I'm talking as an HR, I'm talking HR data analysis, because that is where I sit in, right? So like you talk about food data, right? But me, I'm talking about HR data. So you fill the forms, it helps you to know the number of requests and all, then you are able to give more insight. So just to answer your question on how to begin to get data.
Yeah.
It could be formed small. It might not be an elaborate form, just something little. So for example, back to your food. When did this, it could even be a register in food. Oh, this supplier came in, dropped XYZ on this date. So one can easily trace, oh, on this day, this way, and if you're going to make production, this was the batch we took. Do you understand? So
Yes.
it makes more sense and it makes sense that one is able to document every single thing that is happening in your organization. Just like the example you gave, that if there are processes, if there are issues, regulatory issues, you can easily go back and say, oh, this is where it was. Then he absorbs you as an individual or a business. He absorbs you of every issue because there is something documented. There is a trace we can track. So, just to shed more light. Thank you for the time and thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And really, sometimes it absolves you really of a lot of issues, because you might, you could have done some things irresponsibly, and that could have been found out, because if you don't have records, then you are seen as irresponsible, right? And then you'll be able to absolve yourself if you've done all your due diligence and it's now traced the fact that, oh, it's the company that delivered something to you, that did something that was wrong and all of that. Or you might even find out what you need to change in your process to avoid it. And also, if you know that regulatory is big on certain things, you can prepare yourself for that. To avoid getting into that problem, you can create processes to checkmate what regulatory will be checking you for, to ensure that you are in compliance before regulatory checks. And that is very important and a very big part of some of the things that we used to do when I was in the telco environment. Right. Thank you so much for the engagement. Thank you for your questions, and thank you for your contribution, Angela. I'm very grateful to get that feedback from you. Do we have any other question, any other observation around business processes? Nyonke, you want to share something with us? All right. So if we do not have any question, so where are you today? We've talked about that, and this is our offering to you today. You know, in our objectives, we mentioned that there are 3 things we want to achieve today. We want to get you, let me go back to our objectives so that we can check it out and see if we have met our objectives for today. We want to show you how data flows in your organization, and we want to help you identify where you are in your organization, and we want to share our offer with you. And the question is, where are you in your organization today? Are you collecting your data, or your data is free flowing today? Are you able to tell what exactly is happening within your team? I remember in my former life, like I like to say, in my former life, like I like to say, I used to have a lot of issues, like trying to figure out who is supposed to do what, who did what, when it's supposed to do, and stuff like that. But by the time I was able to identify all of the processes within our reporting pipeline, and I was able to assign responsibilities, because I was able to identify the processes, it became easier to manage. It became easier to say, oh, this person is supposed to be doing this. And it was easier to create dashboards for even the people who are responsible to track what they are responsible for. Because in the world that we live in today, with the increasing demand for variety and the challenges that come with technology and trying to meet the speed of service that is expected by users today, most businesses run into different kinds of trouble. Creating more and more services and different pipelines that at the end of the day, the business is overwhelmed, the staff are overwhelmed, because they really can't tell what's happening, where they should be focusing on at some point in time. And so it's very important that you're able to identify your processes and then break it down and be able to create dashboards, create checks on it, so that you know that when things are going in this direction, I know that I need to quickly run and check things, because something may be going wrong somewhere. Probably we'll do another webinar sometime in the future that will look into operations and how to track your operations and ensure that you have processes that can really track your operations using your data, because like I say, data is everybody's business and everybody has data. So do you want us to have customized data literacy